Well, good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Chip Kay. I'm the superintendent of Columbus Public Schools. And the purpose of our Facebook Live presentation tonight is to give all of our stakeholders here in Columbus the most up-to-date position for the school district in our response to growth. Have about 10 slides to share with where things sit and what our plans are going forward. We will have the ability for you to put questions in the chat on Facebook. We ask that you keep the questions respectful and without profanity because there's obviously other people who are watching this, and we'll do our best to get to those. I want to thank everybody who's on tonight and who will be watching this down the road for taking 30 minutes out of your busy schedule to get the most up-to-date information on what the school district's doing. We greatly appreciate everybody taking the time to do that. So I want to start with a little bit of review of where we're at as far as growth information on the community of Columbus, and just go ahead and thank the Chamber of Commerce and the developers here who have been involved keeping us up to date. Anything you see with a maroon print and underline is an active link. The links to those will be on the last slide, and when we share this out, we'll also share those links in case anybody wants to look those up as well. So on the updated information, we know that there's going to be 1,800 housing units or doors in the Columbus city by 2029, and all of those are within the Columbus Public Schools district. We do know the first development along 8th Avenue, referred to as Vitality Village, will be opened in 2026, and so we anticipate seeing some students as that opens up next fall, especially at Centennial Elementary. We know that the housing expansion is enough room for 3,500 people in the city of Columbus, and based on 2024 estimated census data, Columbus was at 25,126. That makes Columbus the fourth fastest growing community by percentage in the state of Nebraska. So something else for everybody to keep in mind, our actual census for the school district's a little bit higher. Our district, besides being the city of Columbus, also includes south of the Loop River and along Highway 30 into the village of Duncan. So when we talk about the 1,800 doors, that includes all residential construction. And what I'm going to show you on the next map are the 5 residential areas that we've been tracking. Those are the developers or the city or the chamber that we've been getting the information from so that we can have the most accurate information about the impact on the school district. Now, as we're looking at how things are playing out, I will share that this is very similar to what happened in Columbus between 2014 and 2019. During that window, that would be when the school district passed their bond for the high school and was completely opened and restructured in 2017. The school district's enrollment in those 5 years grew from 3,400 to 4,200. And we've stayed pretty much in that 4,200 range ever since 2019. We've stayed pretty steady. We do know with the upcoming residential development that an enrollment study we had completed in December of 2024 shows that the lowest number of students we would get from this growth is 350. The average we would get would be about 550. So we're really looking at those as kind of being our target window. We could see as many as 800 students if they all attended to the district, Columbus Public Schools, or if all of it gets filled up right away. So we're looking at those numbers when we're planning as we look to what we can do to mitigate that and have some additional growth by 2030. So currently, the 5 developments that we're looking at in rather closely are marked on this map. Now, this is a heat map of Columbus Public Schools students. And so the darker the red is the higher density of students that attend the school district. You'll see in red, there are 5 boxes. Those are our 5 elementary schools. The blue dot is the current location of the middle school campus. And so that gives everybody kind of a point of reference. And so we're looking at the North Creek development. That's one of the most recent ones we found out about. It's near Highland Church, just near Lost Creek Elementary. That will have 110 doors. The second development is Farm View. It's the second part of Farm View. kind of runs on the west side of the airport. There will be 40 units. I understand those are going to be condos. I'm going to skip to number 4 because that's one everybody has seen develop. That's Meadow Ridge and Vitality Village, right by the East Fire Station, right along A Street. Going to be about 350 doors in that development. And those students would go to Centennial Elementary. And then Quail Meadows, which is near where the grass dump is, that's going to have about 70 units. Those would go to Centennial. And really, it was development number 3 called Cottonwood. It's near the Parkway, near 3rd Avenue, just east of the airport, and it's near the bypass Walmart area. So that development's going to have about 570 units. It's going to be a rather large residential area, and it would go to North Park. And so if you currently look at the number of doors going to each of our elementaries, North Park's going to get about 610 doors. Centennial's going to get about 420 doors, and then Lost Creek's going to get about 110. Now, currently, Emerson and West Park Elementaries are both full. They're at 100% capacity. We have some space at Centennial. North Park is just below 100% capacity, and Lost Creek is just below 100% capacity. So you can see that the impact of these 3 developments are going to really put a strain. Now, keep in mind, not every development is going to be just elementary kids. Some will go to middle school, some will go to high school. And that is also what's putting a little bit of strain on our district as we plan for the next 5 years. So the current impact of this growth is right now you can't get into your neighborhood elementaries if it's full. And so 4 of our 5 schools right now, depending on your grade, you would have to go to a building that's not in your neighborhood. And we have neighborhood maps, but because of capacity, we've had to move families who register late to a different building. We won't move anybody who's already in a building. It also impacts our in-district transfer. And so that has been the impact of where we're at today. So this is all pre-growth information. Right now, we have no empty rooms, and so we don't have the space to expand sections or grades. We've got all of our classrooms filled in all of our elementaries and at the middle school. So currently in K-8, the class size grade limits are primarily 20 to 26 students, except for kindergarten. We're fortunate to have a little lower numbers in kindergarten because we added a kindergarten teacher this school year so we could keep our numbers low. Question would be, why do we add that kindergarten teacher? Only about 40% of our kindergartners are taking any preschool or any kindergarten readiness classes. And so because of that, the need to have a little smaller class size. So other than that, we're at 20 to 26. If we don't have any additional space to grow, we expect numbers to be 28 to 35 per grade level section. So if the class is sitting at 22 to 26 right now, you'll probably be 30 to 35. And that's also going to make the middle school classes big as well. So right now in middle school, we have 1,207 students in grades 5-8, and that's the largest middle school in the state of Nebraska. And to give you a comparison, Norfolk in grades 5-8 has 1,253 students. They divide them into 2 buildings. They have a 5-6 building and a 7-8 building. And Fremont does a very similar thing. We're fortunate enough to have a large facility that used to be the high school to use for our middle school. But even when that was at 1,100 students for high school, it was deemed to be too big. So class size matters. And in a Hanover study, there's a couple things I want to share when we've looked at class sizes. To really have meaningful benefits, you've got to reduce your class sizes to 15 students or fewer. That's really not realistic for the school district. That there is an efficiency part that we have to have with how many kids we can have per staff. That's cost, also space. So we don't have the space to reduce our class sizes to 15 or fewer. That was kind of our goal for kindergarten, and that was directly a result of the kindergarten readiness, but we really are shooting for that 16 to 25 range. And so that's because even the studies show that there's no measurable impact, positive or negative, with the 16 to 25. So that really is your optimum range for an effective classroom size. Obviously, the greatest benefits are in grades K-3, which is what we're talking about today with the elementaries. and particularly for minority and low income students in those elementary grades. And so using that data has really kind of helped us craft a plan moving forward. We're also starting to ask the question of what does bigger mean? Well, at the elementary, once you get above capacity, you start having large PE class sizes, or you start having PE less during the week. For lunch, you either have more lunch periods or they eat early or late. And in 3 of our buildings, the lunchroom and the gymnasium are the same space, so there would be continued conflicts with PE. As far as music, that's currently in a regular classroom that we have. Kids go to music. To continue offering it, you're going to probably have to use that room for a class, which means you either offer music with they float around and go to the classrooms, not conducive for what we do in elementary music curricularly, or you start reducing those offerings and programs, something we don't want to consider. Bigger for the middle school, obviously it's going to be class sizes when you start talking about up to 35 kids in a class. But you're also talking about lunch. And what we're trying to do without, touch lunchrooms would be how could we do some things that would minimize having to have more lunch periods, having kids eating really early or late, or having overcrowded lunchrooms. And so those are all kind of the byproducts of the infrastructure when you start to look at being overcrowded in a building. I'll even go back to the Hanover study. We know that if we have crowded classrooms, it's going to negatively impact our student learning. So after a whole year of collecting data, working with different focus groups, getting a lot of feedback from stakeholders, the decision is to move forward with a bond issue, and that bond issue would help to construct an intermediate building for grades 4 and 5 in Columbus Public Schools. Now, the building you see in the picture is kind of an idea of what an intermediate building would look like. It's a multiple story building with about 95 to 97,000 square feet. We would build our capacity for 800 students. The reason we would build the capacity for 800 is it's to handle growth in grades 4 or 5. So ideally, if we have an option, we'd like to build on the north side of the middle school campus. In other words, we would have 2 buildings on that campus, the intermediate building and the middle school. Middle school would change to grades 6, 7, and 8. Grades 4 and 5 would be in the intermediate. The buildings would not be connected. They would be separate. This summer, we took a group of about 16 stakeholders, people from our district, board members, teachers, to look at Brookings, South Dakota's intermediate building. They have a 4-5 intermediate building. It gave us a great opportunity to look at layout, to look at effective use of space, everything from how the HVAC and restrooms were laid out to what they did in the cafeteria, how they did scheduling. It was a great visit. And it was really through that visit and the feedback of the group that it solidified that this was going to be a great option for our community and for our students. We also know that Fremont and Norfolk have 5, 6 buildings as examples. We would plan to visit those as well to get some ideas of how you can make a 2 grade level building work effectively. Again, a separate facility. It's going to have a playground and outdoor ed space. The advantages of having it on the middle school campus is we're saving on infrastructure, and it's a central location. If you remember the heat map, it did show that we still have most of our students live within about 0.6 to 0.7 of a mile from the middle school area. Now, why 4th and 5th grade together? Well, first of all, developmentally and curricularly, they're very similar. Bringing these 2 together is going to increase some options. And so right now we have Title I reading intervention through grade 4. Grade 5 now gets the opportunity to have that. High ability learner programs, very much centered on 4th and 5th grade for our identification and type of curriculum, opens up that opportunity for those students. It opens up collaborativeness for the teachers. 5th grade teachers understand that they're all in one building together. We had a chance to meet with 4th and 5th grade teachers last spring and really talk through what they saw as advantages. And that ability to work together when you talk about curriculum and delivering curriculum and having things set up for students. I'm very excited that a 4-5 building opens up an opportunity for extra programming. Our 5th graders don't lose anything. They still have the opportunity for STEM classes in technology and engineering, music, visual arts. Well, right now, our 4th graders don't get visual arts and technology and engineering. So we've increased the opportunities for the 4th graders while ensuring the 5th graders don't lose anything from that they have in the middle school. If we were going to open this intermediate building today, it'd have about 575 students, and that would create immediate space in all 5 elementary schools. We did get feedback, why not build an elementary school? Well, if we build an elementary school, we don't solve the problem at the middle school of needing to move the 5th graders out and needing to have that space. If we built another elementary, we would still have to add on to the other elementary buildings in order to put 5th grade back there. By moving the 4th grade and 5th grade both out, we not only get space at the middle school, but it adds enough space in our current elementary buildings when they become K3 to add 4 grade level tracks in each grade level. That's the equivalent of really building a 4-track elementary school. So we could add 4 more sections of kindergarten, 4 more sections of 1st grade, all without having to add space to any of the elementary schools. When you build a new building versus an addition, the Department of Education gives you a 2-year new site funding that you can use for staff. That's how you minimize the impact on your budget. So after 2 years of having that staff, they're in the formula for how we get state aid calculated. So it minimizes the effect on your annual operations for the building with your taxpayers. And so that's a nice extra feature that allows us to staff that building. Also, very important to any location we choose for a new site is a traffic study. We fully recognize the challenges of getting in and around any of our schools during the beginning of the school day and the end of the school day. It's a challenge that every school district shares. But we've hired Benish to conduct a traffic study. The traffic study starts tomorrow in and around the middle school. We've met with the city to get their cooperation as we take a comprehensive look at what our options are and how we could better impact or better alleviate the traffic concerns in that area. So as much as everybody, I'm sure, would like to see what is this building going to look like, we're not to that stage of the planning. That would be a lot of work to do pre-bond, and so we're going to wait until the bond results are in, and then we would get into the more formal part of design. But to give everybody an idea, that maroon square is the ideal footprint for where the intermediate building would go. Now, it could shift a little bit more west, but that's just to give you an idea of the footprint that the building would need on the middle school campus. The area in white is the current east parking lot and kind of the in and out of the middle school. That all is being studied as part of the traffic study, because one of the things we want to look at is, could we redevelop the east side of the school using either some of its current configuration or completely reconfigure it to make traffic flow work a lot better, even for the current middle school, but with the addition of the intermediate building. Also, the traffic study will study basically a 2 to 4 block area all the way around the campus. So wanted to give everybody an idea of what this kind of looks like. That maroon square could move around, so there's a lot of factors. But one thing that's important is that we keep as much of the outdoor space that's used for PE and outdoor activities as possible. But we also want to minimize how much of the parking lot that we're going to have to reconstruct. And so all of that is going to be part of this and is figured in to our budget for the project. So at this point, what's the preliminary data? What does it mean for me as a taxpayer or a homeowner in Columbus if we're going to do this? And so the only way for the district to do a construction bond is to do a bond election, a bond referendum, and a vote of the people to take out a bond to build. We're looking at a budget of 43.6 million, and that's all costs associated with everything from development to construction to eventually opening the door and having students in there. At that 43.6 million, last week we received valuation information, which allows us to kind of figure the impact on the levy. So this last school year, the overall district levy, which included general building, bond, QC-PUF, any of the taxable funds, was $1.13.1. This upcoming year, based on information from our business manager, Jason Shatman, it looks like the levy is going to be $1.08.5. So it is going to go down a little bit. If the bond would pass for construction of the intermediate building, starting in the 26-27 school year, the levy would go back up to $1.13, the same levy we had last year. Now, I recognize that's not levy neutral, and I won't try to tell people it is. There's going to be some additional cost for a bond payment when we do this. So the net impact on this year is going to be 4.5 cents. So for every $100,000 evaluation, that's going to be an increase of $45 over this year. So I don't know what the impact individually for people will be this year with lowering our levy by 4.5 cents. And so it's a little bit of a difficult conversation to have, but I wanted to give everybody a snapshot of what we see the impact being should the bond pass. Again, staffing additions are covered in the 2-year new site allowance, so that would increase our state aid. That's going to help and minimize any impact there would be in the general fund. So we've been asked about building other things. What does this look like? So really an intermediate building is close to being just a bigger elementary. And that's a pretty cost efficient building to build. We've had people suggest things like build another middle school or do some other things. We know right now a new middle school would be about 55 to 60 million to build if it was going to be the same square footage as the intermediate building. And Bennington has passed a bond for a new high school. That high school that they're going to build is relatively the same size to the high school that we have here in Columbus. And that costs, it's going to cost them about 110 million. So Columbus, when we passed our bond in 2014 to 2025, the cost of the same high schools doubled. And so things unfortunately aren't going to get any cheaper in the area of construction. So what will passing the bond and construction mean for the district long term? If the intermediate building opens in 2028, that's going to match the development construction timeline. So we're going to be slightly ahead of all of those homes being filled, which is going to be critical that we don't get stuck in a bubble of growth that we're unprepared for. It's going to create 800 new seats for grades K-8. Now, this would be the first new seat construction since 1965 when the district built Lost Creek Elementary. And I've had to explain this to a few people. Yes, I know when we built the high school, it gave a few more seats to the high school. We then moved the middle school to the old high school and moved 5th grade in there. And then we took the old middle school down. That created a few additional seats in the elementaries, and it created a few additional seats at the high school. But it was not really new seat construction. It was a lot of shifting some things around. The same thing happened with Centennial. When Centennial Elementary opened, it was after closing 2 other elementaries. Emerson was a rebuild. And other than those 3 buildings, there's been no other new construction since Lost Creek in 1965. And so obviously with new construction, building those new seats gives us true growth and expansion. There's no other projects associated with this bond. It will just be for development and construction of an intermediate building. We're not touching any of the other buildings in the district through these bond funds. And there's no other plans for anything at this time. It would be just to do the intermediate building. More and more, when we've talked with people about feedback, we don't want to lose the small town feel of our schools. And our priority is to keep small neighborhood elementary schools. Going to a K-3 allows us to do that, also allows us to go back to allowing people to go to their neighborhood schools, and it will address the size of the middle school. We really don't want to be the biggest middle school in Nebraska. And so our middle school enrollment would go down to between 800 to 900 students. That's going to be a little bit more comparable to Class A type middle schools. So it's going to help in that way as too. I'm sure some people are aware we own property on 3rd Avenue. There's not been a lot of development there. Looking at the planned development, our property on 3rd Avenue would be best suited for an elementary school to serve all of that new development. And then the district, while it would use some of the ground for elementary school, would obviously not use all of the ground for the elementary school. So just a little bit about what we're looking at long term. Right now, we're also working on a facilities management plan that shows exactly what we have for facilities, what the infrastructure, HVAC, et cetera. What do we have to do to continue to maintain those facilities to stay in top working order? What our commitment has to be there? And then what are the trigger points with enrollment in the future that would cause us to look at doing something different or something additional? It really comes down to enrollment points for us. While we like to be able to add new programs, we have to use the space we have the best possible way we can. And so it's going to be enrollment that drives any decisions we make down the road. So I'll give you just a quick roadmap of where we are. Prior work, we've been kind of since May of 2024 doing a lot of meetings, working with focus groups, updating enrollment data, and figuring out exactly what was going to happen with the growth. This summer, after the board made the decision, after looking at 3 possibilities, making the decision to go with the intermediate building, we've hired Benish for the traffic study. We've brought in some consultants to help us get the most accurate information we need and some guidance with the project. What's going to happen on September 8th is the school board is going to vote to pass a resolution to call for a bond referendum and election for $43.6 million to build and equip a grades 4 or 5 intermediate school. That bond election will be a mail-in election, and the ballots would be due on November 4th. And it's for all registered voters in the Columbus School District. Now, something for everybody to know. If you're not registered to vote in Platte County or in the school district, you have until September 4th. There is information on the county website, but you have to be registered to vote by September 4th to vote in this election. So I do want to share who we have on board. Obviously, I'm the superintendent, and so my job will be district lead. Mr. Leonard Kwapnowski is our director of operations, is involved in all the things we do with facilities. We are working with Clark and Anderson, who's giving us architect and engineering work so that we can have make sure that we're doing the right things. Jay Spearman is bond counsel, so bond counsel, so what the cost would be involved. That's who's providing that service. We'll eventually hire a construction manager at risk. The RFP is out now. Their job will start if the bond passes. Dan Carpenter is leading the traffic study with Benish. I see one of the questions, when will the traffic study be released? We'll have some preliminary traffic study information in September, but the final traffic study information will be available in October. The reason we're getting a preliminary information in September is that site won't work for us to put the intermediate building on. Then we would go to a site B. They would shift their study over to site B so that we could make sure site B information is to the public in October. So we'll have that plenty of time before the vote occurs where people have to have ballots in. Our marketing communications person here at the school district, Nicole Anderson, is dealing with our marketing and communication. And then we're very fortunate to have Derek Sharman, who's a Centennial Elementary parent and a business owner here in Columbus, who is helping head up our community committee. Our community committee is helping us with giving us some insight, some feedback, and basically ensuring that we're keeping the the right focus on what we're doing. One thing I'm really happy about as we kind of move forward with this process is we're counting on people from Columbus, and we're having people from Columbus ensure that we're doing this in a manner that would be supported in the community. So I just thought I would share and be really transparent with who we have on board providing some work for us. And there's already been some questions and answers coming in, and I'd be willing to get those if you want to put those in. I know there's a question. The first one here, is this sustainable, or are we going to have these discussions again in 5 years? So I think that's a fair question. And what I can tell you, between now and 2030, our district with that growth has the potential to grow up to 550, 600 students. And this is going to create 800 seats. We're not going to have to come back to the public, we hope, for anything with the high school, that we can handle the growth at the high school. But if we picked up 1,000 students, that would be pretty substantial. I just want you to know that. Keep in mind that last growth spurt was about 800 students. And so based on that prior data, we're willing to handle one of the biggest bumps in enrollment. Sustainable is a difficult question. I know people would like to think that we can see the future. And even if we bring people in to do studies, there's no way to know what's going to happen in Columbus in 2031, 2032, 2033. Economy can change, the industry can change. We also don't want to build much above what we know data shows us that we need. So from a sustainability standpoint, we can sustain having a 4 or 5 building. We can afford to have a 4 or 5 building. The way that the state aid and that works, it's not going to cause kind of a big issue in our budget or a big issue for taxpayers. Are we going to have these discussions in 5 years? I will be honest with you. If the Cottonwood development, and I'll go ahead and bring that slide back up for everybody. If the Cottonwood development, which is number 3, ends up expanding more than 570 doors, then it's likely, because we own property next to number 3, it's likely in 7 years you're going to have to be talking about an elementary out there. But at this point, where no ground's been turned, and the development is not expanding, it would be difficult for me to ask our taxpayers to also do an elementary school at this time. But I want to be really transparent that you could be talking about an elementary in 7 years. And hopefully I see there's a question on there about the traffic study, and hopefully I answered that when I was talking about Dan Carpenter and Benish. Again, I will just reiterate where we're waiting for some more questions to come in. I greatly appreciate the work of our staff here in the district, the staff members, board members, and community people who have been involved with kind of going to look at the other building and have provided us a ton of input on how things could go and some solutions for the growth. I appreciate the concern about traffic to the middle school. That's why we're doing a traffic study. And we'll look at that, and then we'll go to Plan B if we have to. All of us who've been a part of this project have a lot of concerns about a lot of locations. We don't want to build in a spot that creates drop-off and pickup challenges from spreading out all of our buildings too far away from our community as well. But we'll know the results of the traffic study and exactly what we can do, and then we'll pivot from there if we need to. But I appreciate the concern with that was expressed. I know we're prove that this is not sustainable. Well, I do want to. I guess I will say this in response, that the district brought forward a bond issue in 2023, and it failed almost 2 to 1, and cost is a big part of that. And I appreciate that we probably could be looking grander and we could be looking at bigger things. Keep in mind, we've pulled and worked with a lot of different focus groups, and there is a fiscal limitation to what the community is able to handle. And again, I think we've worked diligently to match that fiscal limitation along with a reasonable conservative plan that still gives us plenty of growth seats in the district over the next 5 to 7 years. We can add more staff to that building, as far as teachers and counselors and paras. As far as for the other buildings in the district, we can't use the new staff allowance for other buildings in the district. And Um, we we have we have as much staff as our space will allow in the other buildings, and are in the best shape we can be there. So a question was, if you live outside of Platte County, how are we able to vote in this election? So the only people that can vote in the bond issue are those who live in the Columbus Public Schools district. And so while we have a little bit of our district in Butler and Polk County, it's primarily Platte County, City of Columbus, and to the Duncan area. So ballots will only be mailed to registered voters whose tax ID shows that then they're in the Columbus Public Schools district. So no, fourth grade will not move to the middle school. We would be building a new intermediate building. The building would house grades 4 and 5. It would be on the property near the middle school, but not part of the middle school, an entirely separate building. Those two buildings, the middle school and the intermediate building, don't share staff. They don't share lunchrooms. They don't share gyms. So they're exactly just two separate buildings. So the goal is to have fourth and fifth graders together because of their developmental and curriculum, and move the fifth grade out of the middle school. And so the question is, do parents support this? We've received a lot of positive feedback from the parents that completed the surveys last spring about having fourth and fifth graders together, especially with them being in a building together, what they'll get curricularly, and moving the fifth grade out of the middle school. Yes, one of the slides showed that, yeah, there'll be a playground with the intermediate building. And again, just for everybody who's on right now, we will be reposting the live recording of this presentation tonight and have it available on our Facebook page. And so if there's somebody that is asking questions or wants the most updated information, you'll be able to direct them back to our Facebook page in order to watch the video. Again, trying to keep it to a relatively short time so that it's watchable. And I appreciate the comment. Thank you. Well, we're kind of rounding up to that 40-minute point, and if there are no other questions coming in, I'm going to call it a night for this presentation. Again, thank you sincerely for being on tonight. Appreciate everybody's feedback. You'll be able to see this posted on our Facebook page, and I would encourage you to pass it on to as many of our stakeholders, your neighbors and friends as possible. We simply want to make sure everybody has information, the most up-to-date things going on. And as always, I'm here to answer questions. Um, and again, thanks. Have a great evening.